Welcome to this grab bag on learning styles. You'll notice the slightly different colour theme for this one, as this video has taken a different approach. Rather than presenting you something you might like to incorporate into your thinking about teaching, I'm going to discuss an educational myth that needs to be dismantled and removed. And that myth is the myth of learning styles. Here's what Rena and Willingham said about learning styles theory in 2010. Well, that's pretty clear, isn't it? However, what makes this such an important topic is the significant lack of credible data to support learning styles, and in spite of that lack of data, its almost ubiquitous presence in average Joe's understanding of how learning happens. It's absolutely everywhere and just refuses to be banished. You can ask just about anyone on the street under the age of about 60 what their learning style is, and not only would they know what you meant by the question, they'd probably come up with an answer like, well, I'm a visual learner, or something similar. So what is the issue? What's wrong with thinking about teaching from the perspective of learning styles? Well, there are upwards of about 70 different theories that fall under the broad definition of learning styles. So let's deal with what is probably the most common version of learning styles, which is probably the VAC or VARC theory. VAC stands for visual, auditory and kinesthetic learning styles. Now, the theory suggests that each learner has a learning style, and that's some kind of inherent feature of their cognition, something that's largely innate. It's their individual way of thinking or processing. And if you cater for it properly, if it's matched to your teaching, that's going to enhance their learning, kind of regardless of the topic. We're not merely just talking about a preferred way of working. So, thinking about teaching and learning in this way obviously has a major impact on the types of activities you might find teachers doing in a classroom. So here's our teacher. He or she has 3 topics to teach. Now, learning styles theory suggests that each of these topics will be best taught by adapting the instruction according to the supposed learning style of each of the learners. So we have 3 example learners here. Let's say we conducted some sort of learning styles questionnaire, and now one learner is assumed to be a visual learner because the questionnaire said so. One's an auditory learner, one's a kinesthetic learner. And lots of us teachers were taught either explicitly during our training or we've picked it up from our own schooling that good teaching requires us to identify the learning styles of our students and tailor our teaching accordingly, because that's the way that that learner will learn best. So according to this theory, topic 1, whatever it might be, should be adapted to the learning style of the learner. In this class, we've determined there are students with 3 different so-called learning styles, and so the teacher has to adapt the task into 3 different formats. One format for the student who learns via visual means, and so on. And the same has to happen with topic 2, and again for topic 3. Although the workload for the teacher here is, let's just say, not conducive to a good work-life balance. And this, in a nutshell, is what learning styles theory suggests as good practice. However, this theory is now widely discredited by researchers as being both inaccurate and unhelpful. So why is it now thought to be inaccurate and unhelpful? What do we now know about learning that means learning styles should be ditched? Well, human cognitive architecture across individuals is more similar than it is different. There will be surface level differences, but there are deep similarities in the way that we process for our learning. For example, the way the long-term memory and the working memory interact is largely similar across individuals. The capacity of the working memory is largely similar across individuals. And one of the key similarities is that near enough everyone is able to learn under a range of different modalities and methods of instruction. And on this point, it appears to be the case that multimodal learning, where modalities are matched to the topic rather than the student, is probably better for everyone, including those with SEND, and perhaps even especially those with SEND. Now, a brief caveat before I move on. This isn't a claim about personality or individuality here. Of course, we're all unique and different personalities, but as far as our cognition for learning in an educational environment is concerned, the similarities in our cognition far outweigh the differences, again, in our cognition. Well, when I presented this to trainee teachers recently, one astute student asked, okay, so there's no innate learning style, but what harm can it do to tailor to learning preferences? Wouldn't that mean improved levels of motivation? And actually, that's a really good question. However, here's a warning on this from Willingham. He suggests that tailoring to a preference may in fact limit learning and thereby decrease motivation. A student, for example, identified as a visual learner is never going to succeed in learning to ride a bike from watching videos and looking at a step-by-step bike riding instructions. So ultimately, motivation is going to suffer, they'll give up. Here's what he wrote. So people do have preferences for a particular style or modality, but that doesn't translate into greater learning. Let me draw again on the bike riding example to emphasize the point. If you wanted to learn to ride a bike, would you use a visual approach where someone watched others bike riding? Would you use an auditory approach where you described in great detail how the pedals work and how to balance and so on? No, you'd use a kinesthetic approach because that approach fits the thing that you want to teach. And how much account would you take of people's preferred learning styles in this scenario? Exactly. And this is the key to understanding why learning styles need to be ditched. There are, of course, different ways to present a topic or some to-be-learned material. But rather than tailoring the chosen method or modality to the student's supposed learning styles, which at best are no more than preferences, it makes far more sense, given what we know about human memory and cognition, it makes far more sense to look at the material or topic or task and think about what the best way is to deliver that material and then deliver in that way to everyone. Back to the bike riding example. Some students may need more support or less support, but you would quite obviously predominantly use one modality for the teaching of riding a bike. Yes, there'd be occasions when you might use visual or verbal instructions too, but these would be used to support the primary modality. So to summarize, don't try to teach according to a particular learning style. They don't exist in any meaningful sense, and you're more likely to demotivate or hinder learning anyway. Try instead to work out the best way to teach the topic and teach all the students in that way. One modality is likely to predominate, but by all means make use of a range of strategies. In fact, it's likely that in making use of multiple methods, you're giving students lots of opportunity to think hard about the topic, which is only going to benefit them in the long run. So here are some references that you can chase up if you'd like to. Feel free to get in touch if you've got any further comments or questions, but that's all for now. Take care.